Good morning. My name is Keith Curry. I'm the president and CEO of Compton College, and I also have served as the current chair of the National Panel of Black Student Enrollment and Black Student Enrollment Expert Advisory Committee. When I think about today's event, I think about being unapologetic, which is not having, acknowledging or expressing any regret. We are unapologetic about the work that we do towards student success because our position, the decision will impact students and their families for generations. When I think about today's conversation as ways to level up, and what level up means is leveraging explicitly values for every Black learner unapologetically. And so we're here today to talk about Black enrollment and retention. And we have a lot of information, different panelists, but we have a couple of different welcomes that we want to make sure we get through as well. So I'd first like to offer the opportunity for Saul Valdez, who is the Senior Program Officer with the ECMC Foundation, to provide opening remarks. Saul.
Thank you so much, Keith, and hello, everyone. So happy to be here with you all. For those of you who don't know ECMC Foundation, we're a national funder whose North Star is to eliminate equity gaps in post-secondary completion by 2040 so that underserved learners have greater opportunity for social and economic mobility. We are incredibly proud to support the Level Up team, incredibly proud. Our ability to eliminate equity gaps, it really requires us to look deeply and critically on how we can better support Black learner success. This is not just a program, it's a commitment to ensuring that all learners, regardless of their background, are recognized and supported and empowered to thrive in their post-secondary journeys and destinations. And it's a commitment that we can all make and uphold with shared accountability and data and evidence. So on behalf of everyone at ECMC Foundation, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this important discussion and not joining us just today, but even on the days ahead, ensuring that we're having ongoing conversation and action about the value and the potential of every Black learner across our nation. So before I wrap up, I just want to thank you for, again, taking the time and just recognize all of the important partners, the educators and the advocates who have joined us in this mission. And as we work towards creating a more inclusive learning environment for all, let's continue to welcome others into the fold. So with that, I'll pass it on to the next incredible speaker that we have lined up.
So the next incredible speaker to provide welcome remarks is Francesca Carpenter, who is with Achieving the Dream, and she's been a partner in this work with us for the last couple of years. Francesca.
Thank you very much, Dr. Curry. So I am extremely glad to be in community with you all virtually to discuss a topic that is important not only to Achieving the Dream and the nation's community colleges, but to all leaders and stakeholders who value higher education, and that is the educational success of Black learners. So Achieving the Dream is a partner and champion of higher education leaders at more than 300 community colleges across the country. And we are committed to student success and ensuring students' economic and social mobility. So building on the momentum of the Level Up report and the Level Up work and ATD's extensive equity work, we are committed to advocating for Black learners and supporting community college leaders like yourselves take action to ensure Black learner success. So alongside Dr. Curry and colleagues at the HCM Strategists and ECMC Foundation, we are building a coalition of leaders who are committed to increasing enrollment and reversing negative access trends. So ATD's continued involvement in the Level Up work, including us serving on a national panel, supports the initiative's call to action for higher education practitioners, thought leaders, and activists, which I'm sure you will hear more about. And it's about establishing the institutional, system, and policy reforms that are necessary to improve the outcomes of Black students. Now, at ATD, we believe that not only are Black learners deserving of a high-quality community college education, but they can receive one if we dismantle the institutional barriers in place and put supports in place that allow them to succeed. Thank you all again for the invitation. I thank you for your participation and your dedication to supporting Black learner success.
So we have a jam-packed agenda, and we only have an hour because we were going to be done within an hour time frame. So please bear with me as I move us through this agenda today. And some might ask, what am I wearing? Today at Compton College is our transfer Thursday, so I have to wear transfer gear. So I have to make sure I stay within tradition at our institution. And so I'm wearing a San Diego State jersey in partnership with Frank Harris from San Diego State. So I'm wearing it for him today. So I would like to invite Dr. Stephanie Markin, who is from the Gallup, to be able to share some data regarding to the Black student experience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Curry, and to the entire team for allowing me to be a part of today's conversation. I'm going to kick us off with a few of our favorite findings from research that Gallup's been conducting over the better part of the last 5 or so years in really studying the Black student experience, but also the perspective of potential Black learners, really trying to understand the holistic state of higher education through a series of studies we've conducted in partnership with Lumina Foundation. And for those of you who are interested in these insights, they're all available on our website on news.gallup.com in much more detail than I could possibly cover today during these 10 minutes. So I definitely encourage you to go to that website. We have extensive research conducted among Black learners, Hispanic learners, female learners, looking at female Black learners, et cetera, really exploring the intersectionality of some of these important demographic characteristics that sometimes explain the student experience. So please do go to that website and download those detailed reports. We're actually currently preparing for another wave of data collection that will happen this fall, and we'll release related insights this spring. So also stay tuned for more. Over the course of the last few years in partnership with Lumina Foundation, we've surveyed about 12,000 individuals throughout the U.S. who don't have a degree or credential themselves and are either currently enrolled in the case of about 6,000 learners, as well as those who are not currently enrolled either because they've stopped out or they've never before enrolled in higher education. And that's been really important to this research study because when we began the research, we were really just focused on the currently enrolled student population. And of course, if we're going to address declining enrollments and concerns that we see nationally among all leaders that we talk to about, the fact that we're losing not just more learners in general, but also learners of color, Black men, et cetera. We really felt like we needed to understand the prospective student experience and the stopped out student experience. So we expanded the research about 2 years ago to include about 6,000 individuals who've stopped out or never before enrolled. And I'll present insights across each of these 3 distinct populations for the purposes of today's conversation. First and foremost, we've been really interested in understanding why students are stopping out of higher education. Of course, when we began this research in the fall of 2020, you can imagine there was so much that was unknown about what the academic year would look like. And we said, well, we really want to understand, are people going to stop out at a higher rate? Maybe they won't because the economy is in an unpredictable place and maybe more students will want to remain enrolled. So much was unclear at that time. When we first started asking in 2020, we found about a third of currently enrolled students who are pursuing either a 2-year or a 4-year degree or credential reported that they'd considered stopping out at some point in the past 6 or so months of their coursework history. You'll see there was a slightly different percentage across the populations in which we surveyed. The rate overall has remained pretty stable. We did see a slight increase in 2022. It kind of leveled back to 2020 rates in this most recent administration, the fall of 2023, with about 35% of U.S. adults who are currently enrolled in pursuing that 2-year or 4-year program, as well as some that were pursuing a certificate or certification, reporting they'd considered stopping out. When we look at Black learners, we see that rate is slightly higher. 40% of those who we interview who identify as Black or African American say they've considered stopping out in the past 6 months. You'll see our rates among Hispanic learners are also slightly higher than that total average at 42% who's considered stopping out in that past 6 months. When we ask individuals why they've considered stopping out, some really important and interesting insights jump to the top. First and foremost, emotional stress and personal mental health reasons are the most important reasons all students who we speak to, including Black learners, report they've considered stopping out in the past 6 months. And that's changed a lot over time. When we first started surveying in 2020, cost was by far the most important reason students reported they'd considered stopping out in the past 6 months. Now, of course, cost is still important. It's still the 3rd most cited reason as to why people have considered stopping out in the past 6 months. But far more important is emotional stress and personal mental health. And we know that emotional stress and personal mental health can mean so many things to so many people, right? It could mean that I have financial stress associated with remaining enrolled, right? So maybe cost is factoring in here in a meaningful way. It could also be that I have caregiving responsibilities, and those are really causing extreme personal and mental health stress that's causing me to leave my program. We also know that personal mental health issues are the #1 reason those who aren't currently enrolled report that they've not, enrolled in the past 6 months. It's important too, next to cost. So it's not just causing some to leave, but it's also causing those who are not currently enrolled to stay unenrolled. You imagine a female who's got 3 young children under the age of 5 in her household and is trying to think about how she'll enroll and work full-time, care for her children full-time who are at home at the same time she'll actually be studying. It's incredibly difficult. I know that because my sister's in that exact scenario. So, these stories are so personal, but all of these factors are so correlated with one another and really interrelated. For our Black learners, we find that emotional stress and mental health reasons are by far the most important, as is cost. And again, we didn't see as much differential by race, ethnicity on this particular item, but we know when we cross race, ethnicity, and gender, we do start to see some important differences. Female respondents, for example, are more likely to take on caregiving responsibilities, and we hear more concerns around mental health and emotional stress from those respondents. When we ask individuals how important each of the following and you're being able to remain enrolled in your program, right? So first we ask, have you considered stopping out? Why have you considered stopping out? And then we want to know what's keeping them in, what's keeping them enrolled. We hear first and foremost greater flexibility in work or personal schedule, as well as greater flexibility in course delivery from the institution themselves are the most important reasons our learners are reporting that they're able to remain enrolled. And that was even more true for our Black respondents. So among our Black learners, we found 59% said that greater flexibility in their work or personal schedule, and 47% said greater flexibility in the course delivery allowed them to remain enrolled over the course of the last 6 months. We also found financial aid and scholarship were really important at 72%, wanting to finish the program as quickly as possible, really looking for individuals who are looking to make quick work and get that degree or credential was also really important. You'll see here that Black students did differ systematically for other students we interviewed on all of these points, right? Far more likely to mention flexibility, far more likely to mention financial aid or scholarship. So we know they're really reliant on those support systems that Francesca mentioned earlier in her opening comments in order to complete that degree or credential. We've also asked individuals about caregiving responsibilities explicitly because we know that's so important to whether or not people are able to persist and complete on time, but also is often a key reason that they're enrolled in the first place, right? To help their family and achieve social mobility. When we look at those with what we would call competing responsibilities, right? So they're caregivers, whether that be to an elder family member, a parent, a young child in their household, they have some sort of responsibility as it relates to caregiving that's probably impacting their ability to remain enrolled. We find that for our Black students, they have those competing responsibilities at a much higher rate. So 36% of our Black students reported that they had those competing responsibilities that were in some way impacting their ability to be present at the institution and ability to remain enrolled. We also saw a lot more of our Black student population was working full-time. And of course, that was a huge challenge for them in remaining enrolled as well. When we ask individuals which of the following they considered pursuing in the past 2 years, and this is actually among those who are not currently enrolled, we find really strong interest among all populations for which we survey in a post-secondary pathway. And not surprisingly to many of those in the Zoom room, most often we hear that it's the clearest path to a better job and a better life. And that's what's really compelling them to higher education. When we look at our Black respondents, we find that 60% of those who don't have a degree or credential, who we surveyed, who are not currently enrolled, reported that they considered one or more pathways that were available to them, which is really consistent with other racial and ethnic groups for whom we surveyed, which you see on this screen. When we looked at the types of credentials and programs that were of interest to them, they were generally pretty similar across the race and ethnicity groups that we disaggregated the data by. We did see strong interest in associate degree pathways. That makes sense given that we see a much higher stopout rate among those pathways, and we know that many of those who we were interviewing are considering returning to a pathway that they've already been in. But again, strong interest across the board in those various pathways. We also asked how important would each of the following be in getting you to enroll. So again, among that stopped out population, what would it take for you to essentially cross that barrier and get enrolled in any one of these different programs? Again, financial aid or scholarship was important. Confidence in the value of the degree or credential was also really critical for the response we surveyed. 59% of Black respondents who are not currently enrolled reported that confidence and value was really critical. And there, we know when we talk qualitatively to individuals, we often hear it's things like the return on the investment will be there, right? I'll make the money back for which I invest. I'll see a living wage associated with the job that I take. There'll be relevancy in the curriculum to the job that I want. So those are some of the things that they're really looking forward and looking to higher education to provide. As I mentioned, all those insights that I just shared, as well as many others, are available on our website. So please do feel free to go onto the website and download those data and keep in touch with us in the spring as we continue to release those insights. And with that, I'll stop sharing and turn it back over to you, Dr. Curry.
Thank you, Stephanie, very much for your insight, from Gallup insight, and also to center us around the data for our conversation that we have with the panel. So just for the participants to understand how we're going to do this, I'm not going to go read every panelist's bio. I'm going to introduce them, and their bios was already dropped in the chat, but I want to make sure I save time. And we're also going to start with the first question to the student who's on our panel. So let me introduce the panelists first. So the first person I'd like to introduce for the panel is Joseph Rice, who is a City College student from Chicago. Joseph's on the panel. We also have Dr. Sonny Cook, who is the superintendent president of Maricosta Community College, and also the current chair of the Association of Community College Board of Directors. We also have Dr. Kim Beatty, who is the chancellor for Metropolitan Community College. And then we also have Chancellor Juan Salgado from City Colleges of Chicago. And I also want to remind, we do have a poll. If you can make sure you complete that as well as we get into this panel work. So let me go to the panel. Joseph, my guy from Chicago. You heard the data. You're a student in community colleges. Why are you still enrolled? Like, why are you still here? How's that happening?
Definitely, I agree 100% with the data. So a unique strategy, or the reason why I'm still engaged and, going hard, is because here at CCC, we offer additional assistance outside of the typical educational, so such as housing, transportation, and living needs. So it's much easier for me to get from home, go to work, and come back to school without having the burden of extra finances or making it to work, so I could provide for my daily essentials. For example, also by networking with different organizations. As City Colleges of Chicago, we partner with Chicago Housing Authority, which provides housing vouchers for different students. So that's another great way, and a good way not only myself, but students will retain and be engaged. Another one is the partnership with Bowman Chicago. It's a new partnership, and it provides apprenticeships for Black learners and students in general, offered apprenticeships in commercial real estate industry. So it's a lot of different good things going on in the community college space in general. So that's why I'm still engaged.
And we want to make sure you continue to stay engaged. And I'm so glad that you're here today. When I first met you in Chicago, you inspired me with your story and how you're pushing to make it. And we all salute you for who you are and what you want to become. And so I got some more questions for you as well. But let me go to Dr. Sonny Cook, who's from the great state of California. Just a question for you. How can we better engage Black learners who may feel disconnected from institutions due to lack of inclusion in classroom and advising experience? How can we get them back involved and engaged?
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I want to echo what Joseph said. I think those supports that help students stay in school, that support their basic needs, are critical, and then the opportunity to network and engage with partners both on campus and in our community that support them are all critical. At Maricosta College in about 2019, it all stems back to our commitment that we included in our mission, vision, values. That is a commitment to becoming a racially just organization. And that commitment involves our institution taking responsibility for closing equity gaps that are historical And so, it falls into the category of student support. That we have an Emoja program that specifically supports our Black students in a culturally relevant pedagogy and curriculum. We have an Amend program that really engages young Black African-American students and males in particular in the case of Amend. And we have a student services specialist that specifically focuses on our Black students, so a Black student success specialist. We have a Black graduation that celebrates our African-American students and their milestone of reaching a certificate or graduation. We're opening a Black Resource Center that will open in 2026 that really provides students all the supports that they need in a culturally relevant way in one place on campus. And the work that we do with our faculty is around professional development. So our culturally relevant pedagogy work, we do book readings every single year together as a college. And that we've started with Dr. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. We've moved to Bettina Love's We Want to Do More Than Just Survive. And this year we're going to read a book called Viral Justice together as a college that really is by Ruhal Benjamin, and it's focused on making small individual changes that lead to collective shift in how we approach our work together. One more thing I want to say around just professional development, and then I'll let it go. We have a program that is designed by two African-American individuals at our campus called the Black Community Ally Training. That training has been taken by nearly every employee at our institution and has been solicited and sought out by other colleges because it really creates an environment and a culture where our employees learn to be allies for our Black students. And so those are some of the foundational pieces that we have found really important in our journey to becoming a racially just organization and to being a place where Black learners succeed.
So, Dr. Beatty, how would you address that question regarding to how can we better engage Black learners who may feel disconnected from institutions due to lack of inclusion in classroom and advising experience?
Somebody always does that.
I thought it was going to be me this time, but I'm glad
It was me. I want to also thank you for allowing me to participate. I agree with the data and preparation for this workshop. I pulled our data, and it is exactly as the research showed that our Black males, especially when you disaggregate by gender, you really see a difference in terms of our Black male learners versus in terms of retention and success. And so while we have seen some really good gains, some of the approaches that we have taken are outside of the classroom, just like Joseph mentioned. Creating safe spaces for students to have conversations. We've got a Men of Color organization across the district where at every campus we have advisors that are connected with our Black men where they can talk specifically about those issues. It's important to use the data so that we can educate ourselves and then develop these approaches, especially perhaps in a region that doesn't necessarily embrace, I was listening to Dr. Cook and all those great things that she is doing. It's not as easy for us to make those things happen in the state of Missouri. And so we use diverse, inclusive classroom content so that people can see themselves in the content. Using specialized classes and culturally responsive teaching practices to keep them engaged. I remember when I was in California, we had our Black Studies learning community. We do some of those things through the curriculum here. And our faculty and staff, we share that data so that they feel comfortable in working with our Black students and identifying and eliminating any biases that might impede their success. So I think part of the reason our students, we've seen the success that we have with Black students, whether male or female, is that we engage them uniquely in the classroom where they see that engagement, they see themselves in the curriculum, they see themselves in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom. the traditional TRIO programs and the Men of Color programs and some of the other wraparound services that have already been mentioned that are best practices at other institutions.
So I'm gonna go to Chancellor Salgado with another question regards to what type of events and activities and programming could be implemented to attract Black students throughout the semester. So it's not just a one-off that's happening once or twice a year. What are some things that you think that we should be able to do with our students to keep them engaged throughout the entire semester?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Perry. First of all, I think we have to send a resounding message through our mission and everything that flows from it. So for us too, we changed our mission to addressing socioeconomic mobility and racial equity and, addressing being a more just city. We're in the city of Chicago. We can play a major role, in that regard, by the way. And then it comes down to, when I think about the programming, the biggest program we have is the classroom experience on a day-to-day basis. And so we've invested in systematic approaches to ensuring that, our faculty are completely engaged in the enterprise of caring for students. We've implemented Caring Campus across every one of our 7 colleges, where our faculty make commitments to, common behaviors like learning our students' names, and making sure that we address them in the way that they want to be addressed, right? Greeting them at the doorway, right? Making sure that we're giving them every opportunity to succeed, right? And so behavioral commitments that the faculty come together and champion themselves to create, a caring, community, if you will. We do a lot of partnership, by the way. The students have to know, not just when they come to us, but way before they come to us, that we want them here, that they belong here. And that's, incredible presence in our public schools, incredible presence in our local communities, in our community institutions. Let me tell you one thing, that we're extremely proud of. By working with our public schools, our Black students are now overrepresented among students to earn 15 free college credits while attending Chicago public schools. There's not a single other place in our public school system right now where Black students are overrepresented in something high value like early college. And that's because we've been intentional in going in to high schools and telling students, hey, we want you, we care about you, and your city needs you. In order for us, so I think there's a leadership component here that's really important. And, Joseph didn't mention this, but not only is he an apprentice, at BOMA Chicago with the operating engineers, helping to manage a building in our beautiful city, but he was also part of the Tenniel Black Fellowship and Scholarship Program that honors a legend in our city. That included a number of leadership sessions that also included a trip to Alabama, where he was able to reconnect, with, experiences of African Americans in other parts of the country. We also have been sponsoring trips to Africa so that our Black male students in particular, can, connect with the important origins that are part of their history and their being. And so we're doing things like that, Dr. Curry. And the result of it is, by the way, we've just seen an increase in 4 percentage points for Black degree-seeking students, year over year. Just this past year, we have a universal completion goal of 55%. We're determined to eliminate any equity gap that exists in our institution. And we're telling our students exactly how we're going to do that by supporting them both in the environment, but also in the classroom.
Dr. Beatty, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, it was interesting that he mentioned about students feeling comfortable. And there was a small thing that we realized that could have been a barrier. When you do the application, there's your birth given name that you have to, based upon IDs and so forth, that you submit in your application. And people wanted to be called by whatever whatever their desired name was. And we made that small change in the system to help people feel comfortable in the classroom and so that they felt like they belonged. And I think, I'm certain that among a lot of our cultural groups, that made a huge difference. And it was just a little push of the button that changed how they were addressed so that, because a faculty member sees on the roster, they see what's on the roster, but that's not always the name that you want to be related to. So I just wanted to add to that idea of them belonging, that it was a real small thing that we found was actually a pretty significant barrier and people wanting to come back.
So before I get, Joseph, you want to go on?
Yeah, if I could just add.
Go for it.
Yeah, so to just add on to Chancellor Salgado and Dr. Beatty, the students need that guidance, that approach of guidance, because we deal with so much trauma outside of the classroom. Once we're in a class or in an environment, it's easy to disengage or feel left out. So when you have great faculty and staff who takes the time to learn the student name, who takes the time to check in and see how the student is doing mentally, that helps the student regain that focus and that engagement into the classroom, into educational activities. So I just want that.
No, but Joseph, I'm gonna go to a question to you, then I'm gonna go back to the panelists as well. Chancellor Salgado talked about leadership, right? And leadership matters. And so when you at your institution and leadership, and you know the chancellor, you know your college president, that helps. Am I correct? That
Yes,
you see the leaders.
Yes, it helps. It helps me personally 100%, because that's just them being transparent, them guiding me, them teaching me and acting as that involuntary mentor. So yes, I have a great relationship with Chancellor Salgado and the college president. It's the transparency, definitely.
And so to the other panelists, and we think about leadership, I truly believe in this work that we do unapologetically as racial Black learners. We have to show leadership, and leadership matters. Can you talk a little bit about your leadership in this work? Because even though we have a lot of other responsibilities as CEOs, chancellors, and presidents, but being a leader in this work, it takes leadership. Dr. Cook, you want to talk a little bit about your leadership and how you lead in this area?
Yeah, I would say, I have been at MiraCosta College. I'm starting my 11th year now. And we started together as first generation equity practitioners. We acknowledged and worked with folks who could help us do the personal work in our commitment to racial justice, as well as the professional and organizational work that we need to do. So I would say that in 2014, we were a diversity practicing organization. In 2015 to 21, we became equity minded, and we developed the capabilities, the learning, the knowledge, the tools, the skills, the dismantling of the systems that were holding our students down. And so we were equity minded. And in 2022 and beyond, we really have become an equity practicing organization. And the result of that work has been that over these last 5 years, while overall graduation rates have increased by 30% for our Black African-American students, that journey has resulted in twice the increase that we've seen overall. So when you're increasing the graduation rates twice as much as the overall graduation rates are for African-American students, you're closing and eliminating equity gaps. And that we're seeing with our Black African-American students, with our Latinx students, who's the fastest growing population at our institution. And so that journey has paid off. We are really clear about who we are when we recruit employees. If you don't want to focus on racial justice, you don't want to work here. And it's a part of our recruitment efforts, our interviewing efforts. We have 3 big things that we do at MiraCosta College. It's student success, it's racial justice and equity, and we have a futures lens. So we're looking 10 years beyond what most people are planning for, right? So if we're real clear about that's the train you're getting on, and if you don't want to be on that train, this is not the place for you. And so it's affected our recruitment and hiring, our professional development practices, all of our policies and procedures. And again, that framework of guided pathways is racially informed. We're not just neutral guided pathways implementing. We are implementing a guided pathways framework to improve student success and equity that focuses on eliminating equity gaps. So I think you have to, as presidents, we have to talk about it. We have to practice it. We have to professionally develop ourselves and our teams. And we have to laser focus on the populations that need our support the most. And that certainly for our community is our Latinx students, our African-American Black students, and our over 25 students. Those are the ones that right now we have to allocate resources, energy, time, and professional development around improving their success, and it's paying off.
Chancellor Salgado. Oh, sorry, Dr. Beatty, were you gonna go with it first?
No, I was just gonna add that my leadership around this is like Chancellor Salgado said, we with the board worked with changing our mission and vision statement to be more inclusive. So it's, for me, it's more of putting the process, policies, and future goal of becoming equity minded and an equity centered institution, putting all the resources in place. And so we're on the journey, whereas as Dr. Cook said, she's been there 11 years. I'm in my 8th year. And when I came here, we didn't have a comprehensive DEI strategy or office. And so we've put that in place. We are on the journey of just had a great person who moved to Portugal, who put a great strategy in place for us. And so we're going down that path, given some clear expectations for our human resources department, so that now we've adjusted how we recruit, where we recruit, and what the expected outcomes are for that recruiting. We always have to go for the best candidate, but we need our students, we need all of our staff and faculty to resemble the students that we serve. So putting those things in place. And from a programmatic aspect, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of great things that are already happening. We do a pilgrimage where we take our students down to different aspects of the areas of the South every year. But making sure that those things are in place and those resources are in place, that's what I see as my role. And luckily, I've got a very supportive board, because again, in this region, that may not always be the case. And I've been very fortunate that they're on this journey and actually insisting on this journey with us, so we can make sure that our students are successful. And we are seeing the results, because we've seen dramatic increase, but there's still a gap. And so we're working to mine that gap.
Yeah, Dr. Kerr, I would just add, and I'm in my 8th year, as well, so I'm right where Dr. Beatty is, and I'll probably be calling Dr. Cook right after this call to get some guidance from her on how to accelerate change in the next 3 or 4 years. But I think that, our whole strategic plan, I think planning is important, okay, is, squarely in the space of achieving equity. It's also squarely in the space of building leadership. 6 of my 7 presidents now are people of color. 4 are Black leaders, 2 Black men, 2 Black women. If you look across the leadership in the institution, we are full of leaders, many of whom are people of color. But we're always asking ourselves the question, what are we trying to achieve? And then what will it take to get there, right? And, sometimes we diminish our expectations, based upon the resources we have, the situation that we're in, right? And I think the most important thing is to just, start with the end in mind, and then, ask yourself the critical questions. Are these things that we're doing today actually going to get us there, right? Because if they are going to get us there, we should be doing more of them, more of it, right? And if they're not, we need to course correct. And data is, so important in this. And you have to make sure that your entire organization is set up to be able to collect, analyze, and act upon the right set of information. And that's not an easy thing to do, to build the data capacity in an organization, not just to produce the data, but to actually do something with the data. And I say we're just at the middle part of that journey. So the best is yet to come, because we've given our now capable leaders, that are mission aligned, greater tools and capabilities to achieve their dreams. Because their dreams, the reason why our people are here working for us, is because they want to see Joseph succeed. And it pains them, it hurts them, it hurts me when a student stops out or doesn't get to their desired goal. That's a human being in a life that we had the opportunity to impact, right? And so it's that sense of mission, I think, that's the most important.
So Joseph, I have a question for you regards to your experience and also reach one, teach one. So if you've been able to be involved and engage in programs and activities at City College, how are you able to advocate and tell other individuals about the programs and services that are offered? How are you able to reach out to those individuals, let them know the opportunity that's available to them?
Yes, yes, Dr. Curry. It goes back to that transparency from the people that's paving the way for me, like Chancellor Salgado or the college president and so many more. So I use the methods and techniques they show me to pass on to my fellow classmates, my fellow leaders, my fellow students. I always make sure I provide that motivation, that guidance, and just be kind of sort of a counselor, but just be that friend and that advocate for them. For example, last year, I attended the Waymakers. It's a Black male summit, the #1 empowerment for Black males in the country. So this year, and it went great. It went well. It was very motivational, educational, and informative. So this year, I partnered with First Year Experience, and we were able to coach, to charter 20 Black males to the event this year, and they loved it. They enjoyed it. They had a wonderful time. So it's just being in that space, not just being there to be present, but actually taking the information and taking the resources and bring it back to spaces that don't quite add up to where I was.
So as we close the panel out, and since 2011, we've seen a decline in Black enrollment in higher education, but specifically in community colleges. What word of advice, Dr. Cook, Chancellor Salgado, and Dr. Beatty, would you give to participants that we know the data, we know what's happening? What words of advice would you give as a part of your closing comments? Dr. Cook.
Yeah, I would say the points that were made about data are so important, to look at the data, have honest, open, transparent conversations about the data. And we publish our results in the qualitative and quantitative data in something called the State of the Black College, and that's our analysis and students' words to us about what we can do better and where we need to do better. So openness and transparency about really looking at that data and then what we need to do next.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Beatty.
I think we have to spend, and this is where probably for the last 3 or 4 years, well, you take COVID out, you have to get the institution ready for it. And there's work that's a lift, and depending upon the culture of the organization, where you are, the politics that exist in your state, that may be more or less heavy-handed. But regardless, I think going back to my colleagues' planning, I think it's got to be planned, and you've got to get them prepared for that, because everybody's not ready for that reality check. And I have, not here, but I have been accused of favoring, as Black leaders or leaders of color, we always run into, when you show the data and you show the data that impacts the group that reflects you, and you want to put resources in that direction, the suggestion is that you're showing favoritism. I could use another word, but I won't. And so that's an example, an outcome of an organization that's not ready to have those conversations and hear that. So we're spending the time to get people adjusted and prepared for that. And I think that's an important aspect of being able to, it's a parallel thing. You can have these programs and do certain things, but you've also got to get the institution ready.
I'll just add, Dr. Curry, we're back to past pre-pandemic levels of enrollment at City Colleges of Chicago. We actually saw a 13% year-over-year increase in Black student enrollment last year. We're seeing something a little less, but still likely to be double digits this year as well in terms of growth. And importantly, one of the colleges that Joseph goes to, Kennedy King College and Harvey College, these are Southside institutions that have had years of enrollment declines. They're back on the way up. And I think a big part of that is our students. The student experience drives community conversations, and community conversations, are a driver towards, motivation and inspiration for people to take up education, come back to education, or experience the power of education. And so, just like Joseph, when he has a good experience and he's walking around his community and he's talking to people about the good experience he has, that just reverberates. And so I think that that's a place where we just need to do more, provide our students with tools, and not just our students, but also our faculty. 42% of our faculty are Black. 42% of our staff overall are Black. They're in churches, they're in schools, they're in communities, they're in their own social settings. And when they have pride, and they have a lot of pride over the work they do on a daily basis, that reverberates. And so I think we have to, get better as community college in using our own assets that we already have in different contexts, not just in the classroom or the campus context, but in the community.
So I'd like to say thank you very much to our panelists for their participation today. Your words were very encouraging, but also provide some key strategies for institutional leaders, but also for different regards to program and services. Joseph, my guy, it's great to see you again, and I'll see you soon when I come back out to Chicago. So I'd like to hand it over now to Dr. Kelly Ditchell, who is the senior affiliate with HCM Strategists.
Yes, thank you so much. So we probably could have spent the whole hour on that panel, but do want to definitely spend a little bit of time on our interactive playbook that we are publicly releasing today. So in just a few minutes, Preston Miller and I are going to do a little Q&A and talk you through application of this great tool. But really, part of this whole approach with Level Up, which is, again, leveraging explicit value for every Black learner unapologetically, was an intention to move to action. We did not want to just create another report, something else that stood on a shelf, did want to ground everything in research and data. But so we're really excited to offer this additional tool that enables access and recommendations and real application, hopefully, for you all when thinking about how to actually move on Level Up. So as you can see, the playbook is here. And again, critical issues, definitely grounded in research and data. And unfortunately, no, this isn't a new problem, right? So definitely want to acknowledge that there have been many, many people working in this space for decades, really trying to make moves for our Black learners. And with that in mind, we identified 4 different stakeholders. So that is the audience of this report. state policymakers, federal policymakers, higher education institutions, as well as community and business leaders. And this did come from a longer PDF document. So for those of you who really like to read all the detail and language and context, you can still download the whole PDF that will provide all of the background on which this tool was built. But again, in an effort to make a really actionable resource, we thought it would be also advantageous to offer something that you can just dig into where you're interested and what applies most directly to you. So Level Up, as Dr. Curry mentioned, was organized with an expert advisory committee. So this is a group of researchers, professors all across the country that came together with us to really think about, okay, we know we want to be unapologetic, and you can imagine the conversation around that, but we landed there. Probably no great surprise with Dr. Curry as our chair, and really wanted to think about what is the framework, what makes sense to think about this and leveraging it with others. And so we came up with this idea of real. So in order to level up, you must get real. And what that means is focusing on 4 areas. The first is real transparency and true affordability. So we just want to make sure that our learners really understand that there's more cost than just tuition. That is not always clear, unfortunately, when students are thinking about it. And we know all the fun changes with FAFSA, so really trying to be transparent about these expenses and consideration for students and their families. This was talked quite a bit in our esteemed panel. The E, ensured success through shared ownership. Part of the point here is that the onus is not on Black learners themselves, and it's also not on any one entity. We do not expect higher education, post-secondary institutions to fix these problems themselves. They didn't create it. We know it's systemic. And so it really does require that strong leadership and shared ownership in order to do so. Academic and social supports that create a sense of belonging. Several of our panelists spoke to that as well. In regard to Dr. Beatty and the men of color and Joseph talking about safe spaces for students, we know it's critically important to create this environment within the classroom, across campus, and then considering other needs, like transportation, childcare, all those additional concerns that can come up and be challenges. And then finally, this one was really strong by our EAC. Members were really emphasizing the importance of learner-centered teaching practices for Black learners. And this again came up very clear and strong during this discussion. Thinking about Dr. Cook with the culturally relevant pedagogy and curriculum, students do need to be able to see themselves and understand that their lived experience are valuable and relevant, as well as thinking about that faculty PD and continuing those concerns. And so we created an interactive map, and you can see the 4 stakeholder sections identified over here. So if you're interested in state policymakers in particular or higher education institutions, you can click here and get a sense of what's going on across the country. Also identified, as you can see, are different spotlights. And so these are different examples of things that are working. And one is to provide not just ideas, and I'll show you the recommendations in a minute, but okay, what does this look like? How are people actually doing this in action? And you can see the spotlights are oriented to the real framework. And with that, we do want this tool to be a living document. So if you have thoughts on additional spotlights or other things for us to add, definitely reach out. We do not want this to be a static resource and want to engage with you and others on continuing to make this relevant and as strong as possible. So again, rooted in data throughout. And I'll just click through one of the stakeholder sections really quickly before we move to the Q&A with Precious. And so for higher education institutions, there's a map, but this is now just centered on higher ed, so you can get a sense of what's going on in those places, spotlights again, but want to highlight that this is oriented into the real framework again. And so you can see the REAL is there, starting with R. In each of these sections, we do have specific recommendations after a bit of context and opportunities for you to dig deeper. So there is a full list of references for those that like to check and go into all those detail. And last, but most importantly, we also wanted to directly include the voice of Black learners. It is critical in this work, as I'm sure most, if not all of you know, to really reflect those we're trying to represent, right? We're not making decisions for them, we're making decisions with them. So a huge part of the playbook as well that we wanted to make sure was present is lifting their Black learners' voices directly. So you can see here is a video with Kendra. So I will stop sharing, but the link was put in the chat so that you can dig into this resource and again, reach out with any questions that you have. But now I would love to engage Precious Miller, who is Director of Basic Needs and Belonging at Michigan Community College Association. And we're really excited that our 5th Level Up Community Summit will take place in Michigan in a couple weeks later this month. And Precious, will you please share some details about what we can expect during this exciting event?
Absolutely, Kelly. Thank you for asking. Yeah, every year at the Michigan Community College Association, we host the Michigan Center for Student Success Summit. And this year, the summit will take place in beautiful East Lansing, Michigan. And it's going to happen between September 26th and September 27th. And the theme is called Real Talk, Real Data, Real Action, Real Results. The summit will include many key elements that include a keynote from Dr. Curry, alongside a panel discussion that's going to be moderated by one of Michigan's community college presidents. And our panelists will include individuals from our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Alliance group. We're anticipating about 300 higher education practitioners to join us during the summit, and these individuals will come from all 31 of Michigan's community and tribal colleges, and we're excited about leveling up on our commitment to support Black learners in Michigan.
Excellent, thank you. So one of the aspects I love most about this initiative, aside from the unapologetic leadership that is very clear on our esteemed panel, is the real intent to move to action, to drive positive systemic change for our Black learners. So how is Michigan and MCCA specifically planning to move to action? I know you all embedded this from the start.
Yes, action is really important to us, and I really appreciated Dr. Sunny Cook's remarks. It reminds me that commitment looks like something. During the Student Success Summit, we are going to have an opportunity for college teams to come together and develop their very own 90-day action plan. So when they leave the summit, they will be able to plug and play the key focus areas that they select and identify the leaders on their campus who are going to be deeply involved in making sure that they move towards action in those first 90 days, followed up with some engagement with MCCA to remind college teams to review that 90 days following the summit, and then point institutions in the direction of a 4-part education series that our DEIB Alliance group members are going to be leading. And they're going to be about a variety of topics, from the difference between equity and equality and generational poverty.
Thank you, Precious. And last question we'll wrap up with, I love that quote, commitment looks like something. So with that, why is MCCA clearly committed to Black learner excellence and success?
Well, in the state of Michigan, we have over 15,000 Black high school students who are matriculating or not, depending on what region of the state that you're looking at. Currently, we have 10% of those learners enrolling at a community college. Only 28% are enrolling in a 4-year institution. So we know that these numbers can change. What I appreciate about data is that it is a snapshot in time, and everything observable is subject to change. So we are anchoring ourselves in our strategic planning process that includes embedding DEI into our policies, practices, and procedures, followed up with measuring equitable student success in the areas of student access, momentum, completion, and employment. We are digging deep and we're anchoring in to make sure that we are closing these equity gaps for our learners.
Thank you so much. We are really excited for that summit coming up in a couple weeks. We're going to share a contact link in just a second, but I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Curry to close us out.
Yeah, and we got we're at that time. I just want to say thank you to everyone for their participation in today's webinar. I want to just leave with a couple of notes. One, commitment looks like something. Leadership matters, and it's time to level up and to get real. The onus is on us. If we want to improve the success of Black learners within our institutions, we have to show leadership at our institutions to move our institutions forward. So I say thank you to everyone that participated, and the work never stops, and we have to continue this work unapologetically. Thank you.